Hold up. The boy's voice cut through the lunchtime buzz like a blade. Zariah Cole had barely taken 3 steps into the cafeteria when a tall shadow blocked her path. His Letterman jacket screamed, Milbrook basketball. His eyes, cold as steel, stared down at her. Spoons froze midair. Someone swallowed hard. And for the first time that day, the Milbrook High cafeteria fell silent. New girl doesn't just walk in and sit wherever she wants. That's not how things work here. Zariah stopped. No reaction, no raised brow. She just stared at him, quietly enough to make the nearby students stop chewing. Comment 1, if you've ever walked into a room and felt judged before you even said a word. Milbrook High looked prestigious on the surface. Neatly trimmed lawns, polished gym floors, rows of spotless lockers. But inside, it was an unspoken system. Rules passed down not through policy, but through threats, glances, and the suffocating silence of adults who knew and said nothing. To Zariah, this wasn't new. Just another version of the same places she'd seen before, where skin color made you a target long before your voice could introduce you. Her mother, a night shift nurse, once told her, "If they don't want you there, walk in like you belong." She didn't transfer Zariah to Milbrook because it was close. She transferred her because she'd heard this was the place where kids learned how to write the rules. And it was time her daughter learned how to rewrite them. Zariah Cole, 16, had just moved from Detroit with her mother. Her hair was tightly braided and pulled back. Her face unreadable, but her eyes held something older than her age. Standing in front of her was Aiden Carr, Milbrook's golden boy, captain of the basketball team, son of the town's biggest landowner. He wasn't alone. Behind him flanked 2 lackeys, Dax Monroe, skinny, sneering, Logan Pierce, broad, scowling like she'd walked into the wrong store. Zariah didn't flinch. She watched, like someone who'd seen this show before. In this world, Aiden didn't need formal power. He had silence. He had fear. And he wasn't used to being challenged. "We've got this thing called an insurance policy for new students," Aiden said, almost cheerful. "Just a little fee to make sure no one accidentally knocks your books over or shoves you down the stairs. You get me?" Zariah placed her tray on the nearest table. No eye roll, no smirk. "I don't pay protection fees," she said, each word slicing through the fog of fear like a blade. Silence. Aiden raised an eyebrow. Then a pause before his smile returned, wide, toothy, and cold. "Then I guess you're going to have to learn the hard way." That's when the accidents began. Her locker jammed shut with glue. Her textbooks vanished minutes before class. In PE, her uniform was replaced with a torn, stained mess. She didn't complain, didn't flinch. Each time she pulled out her phone, took a photo. She wasn't collecting pity. She was collecting evidence. Between the snickers and smug glances, Zariah quietly began building something no one expected. A case file. Day 4. English class. The teacher asked, "Zariah, what are your thoughts on justice and morality in To Kill a Mockingbird?" Zariah stood. Her voice calm, steady. Her analysis sharp. Her examples precise. The class held its breath, then slow, sarcastic clapping from the back. "Aiden." "Wow, that was so articulate," he said, dragging the last word like a slap. The teacher blushed. The class squirmed. Zariah didn't blink. "Are you surprised I speak clearly?" she said. "Or just surprised that I speak clearly in a body you've been taught to underestimate?" Micah Bennett, an upperclassman who'd once looked the other way when his friends bullied someone, finally spoke up. "She's not like the others they've scared off," he said quietly. In the hallways, during breaks, whispers spread about the black girl who didn't yell, who didn't fight, but who wouldn't bow. Zariah didn't threaten, but her silence made them uneasy. Silence has power when it comes from someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Micah called after Aiden behind the school. "You better stop." She's not the type to just take it and disappear. Aiden gave a lazy smirk, but as he turned, his eyes sharpened. Meanwhile, at home, Zariah was in the basement, fists wrapped tight, driving punches into a hanging bag with unnerving speed. Her shirt clung to her back with sweat, but her eyes never wavered. From her breathing, calm, controlled, to every strike, it was clear. This wasn't a girl learning how to fight. This was a girl who had been waiting for the moment she could. Friday morning. Zariah arrived at school earlier than usual, heading toward her locker in the empty hallway. She turned and froze. Taped dead center on her locker was a banana, black duct tape, a note attached. "Welcome to the jungle." The handwriting was unmistakable. Aiden. Zariah peeled it off without flinching. Her face stayed still, but her eyes recorded everything. Comment 1 if you've ever had to stay calm while swallowing the kind of insult that makes your blood boil. You don't want to miss what comes next. Milbrook High loved to brand itself as diverse and inclusive. Posters lined the halls preaching tolerance. But behind those slogans, harassment was as routine as the morning bell. Teachers were busy. Principal Rivera? He never saw anything clearly on the cameras. Zariah knew the game. She'd seen it in Detroit, a black student forced to sit in the back of the room, and all the footage mysteriously blurry. She didn't need defenders, but this time she knew. They'd crossed the line. Beside her locker stood 2 younger girls, Naomi and Brielle. Naomi whispered, "They did that to you too?" Zariah nodded. No elaboration. Brielle glanced around, her voice trembling. "Would you walk with us after school? Some guys at the bus stop. They get too close. They touch us sometimes." Zariah turned, her eyes like a laser. "Have they laid hands on you?" Brielle nodded, just once, but her whole body shook. Zariah exhaled. 3:15, bus stop, I'll be there. 3:18 p.m. The afternoon sun slanted across Maple Street. Zariah stood beside Naomi and Brielle, silent, eyes scanning the street like a human radar. The golden light painted the sidewalk in waiting. A stillness that didn't feel peaceful, but like something was about to happen. A battered silver Camaro crept around the corner. 3 boys stepped out like they were auditioning for a low-budget gang movie. Brad Matthews, bleached hair, cocky grin. Connor, tattoos snaking down his arms. Tyler, stocky, eyes gleaming like a predator spotting weakness. "Well, look at that," Brad sneered. "You brought security." Naomi gripped Brielle's hand. Zariah stepped forward, placing herself between the girls and the boys. Number, "I'm just here to talk." Connor let out a loud laugh. "Oh, this'll be a real heart-to-heart. 3 guys, 1 little fighter." Tyler stepped closer to Brielle, grinning. "Heard you missed us." She backed away, bumping into Zariah. Zariah raised an arm, an invisible wall. "One more touch, and I count it as assault." Brad rolled his eyes. "Who do you think you are? A superhero?" Zariah didn't respond. She dropped her backpack slowly to the ground. Her eyes locked on all 3. Her body floated light, limbs perfectly positioned. Her braids swayed gently in the breeze, but nothing else moved. Last chance, walk away or learn pain. Tyler charged first and became the first to regret it. Zariah snatched his wrist, twisted it outward, and forced his arm behind his back, every move clean, sharp, without waste. Tyler screamed. Connor lunged. Zariah spun, landing a roundhouse kick that sent him crashing to the pavement shoulder first. Brad reached for his phone thinking he'd film it, but Naomi beat him to it. "Already recording. Want to narrate this too?" In less than 40 seconds, all 3 boys were wheezing on the ground, groaning, stunned. Zariah leaned down over Brad, voice ice cold. "Next time you want to play grown-up, act like one." Naomi and Brielle were speechless. After a long pause, Brielle whispered, "No one's ever done that for us." Zariah adjusted her backpack strap, then turned. "They control through fear, but you don't have to be afraid anymore." Naomi murmured, "They'll come back." Zariah didn't deny it, but her voice was calm, the same one she once used to speak to herself in Detroit. Then so will I. She couldn't stop the world from spinning, but she could stop one child from choking on the silence she used to swallow. As the three girls walked away from the bus stop, the Camaro sputtered off, its engine growling, eyes glaring from the rolled-down window. But what Brad and his boys didn't know was that the video had already been uploaded. Within 2 hours, the hashtag number, Protect Black Girls, had flooded dozens of students' Instagram stories. Micah, watching from a distance, posted on a locked student forum. New girl? Nah, she just made history. Zariah walked home. That night, she didn't train her punches. She watched the video not to admire herself, but to remember. We don't win by throwing fists. We win by refusing to stay silent. The glow from Aiden Carr's phone screen lit up his face in the dark corner of his family garage. On screen, the video. Zariah Cole taking down 3 Riverside boys at the bus stop. Clear. Undeniable. Over 30,000 views overnight. Dax, standing beside him, muttered, "She's becoming a legend." Aiden shut off the phone and slammed it onto the table. Number, she's building an army. Comment 1 if you've ever seen someone in power start to panic over the person they once dismissed. You won't want to miss what's coming. Within 48 hours, Milbrook High was no longer the same. Whispers filled the halls. The once silent students were now buzzing about the girl from the bus stop. On Instagram and TikTok, hashtags like Zariah was right and no more silence began spreading throughout the Black student community. And at the end of the third-floor hallway, a small after-school session began, officially called Advanced Physical Training, led by Coach Terrell. But everyone knew who was really leading it. Zariah. Coach Terrell, who had quietly observed from the start, officially opened the gym to what he called a student physical recovery group. Anyone who's ever been shoved, harassed, or intimidated has a right to be here, he announced, eyes locked on the security camera above. Meanwhile, at a small diner outside town, Aiden, Jake, Dax, and Brad sat huddled in a booth. "We can't win with fists, so we file charges," Brad hissed. "And fast," Jake added, "before she becomes untouchable." 3 days after the bus stop incident, Zariah was summoned to the office. Principal Rivera sighed as he placed a stack of papers in front of her. "We've received 6 formal complaints. They claim you initiated the attack. Some of them have already hired attorneys." Zariah said nothing, but her hand tightened slightly. From the parking lot, Aiden watched, lips curled into a grin. She doesn't get it. Winners don't need truth. They need lawyers. But as Zariah stepped out of the office, her mind stayed steady. They're rewriting the story, but this time I've got the truth on my side. Monday morning, police showed up at the school, not to investigate, but to escort. Dr. Amani Cole, still in her scrubs, rushed in, her voice tight like a pulled string. "What are you doing to my daughter?" Officer Hayes responded flatly. "There's been a petition for an investigation into school violence, with pressure from the parents of the alleged victims. We're here to escort her for questioning at the plaintiff's request." No handcuffs, but the entire school saw it. And just like that, whispers turned into uproar. Elsewhere, Attorney Fox, a young Black defense lawyer, sat in her office, flipping through a folder. "Zariah Cole," she whispered. "They picked the wrong girl to paint as the villain." On the school lawn, Micah Bennett stood in the middle of a student circle, reading aloud. She didn't start the fight. She ended the silence. A mini protest began, organized by students themselves. Handwritten sign, "Defending isn't a crime." Under the arrest video, 800 comments in just 4 hours. Principal Rivera called an emergency meeting with staff and the school board. "We should suspend her," someone said. "Or protect her before this escalates," another countered. Meanwhile, Zariah sat under a yellow interrogation light. Her eyes never wavered. "I didn't hit first. I defended myself, and if it happens again, I'll do the same." That same afternoon, the original video captured on Naomi's phone was sent to Attorney Fox. The footage was crystal clear. Zariah hadn't started it. The three boys had surrounded, threatened, and touched her first. Fox filed a counterclaim, attaching the video and submitting it to district court. At the same time, Coach Terrell signed an official statement confirming Zariah had previously reported bullying, ignored by the school. Within one night, the hashtag number Justice for Zariah hit the top 3 trending list in the state. That day in class, Zariah stood up and delivered a presentation on prejudice and voice in American literature. She closed with a single line: "Silence isn't neutral, it's conditional surrender." Micah gave a slow nod. At the back of the room, Naomi looked at her, no longer afraid. Outside, Aiden was still smirking, but it was the smile of someone pulling puppet strings, unaware the puppet had learned to walk, because he didn't realize. This war was no longer about who hit hardest. It was about who owned the narrative. The hearing room wasn't large, but the tension stretched tight like a wire. Principal Rivera sat silently. On the plaintiff's side, 6 boys, Aiden, Jake, Dax, Brad, Connor, Tyler, heads lowered, collars stiff and pressed. On the defense side, Zariah Cole sat next to Attorney Fox, back straight, eyes steady. Fox rose, opened her laptop, and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, all 6 complaints are based on false testimony, and we have the proof." Comment 1 if you've ever seen a system turn its back, only to flinch when the truth rose up. What happens next will take your breath away. Outside the courthouse, students, parents, and reporters crowded together. A large banner stretched across the front gate. "Zariah is not a criminal. She is a wake-up call." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere wasn't about justice. It was about maneuvering. Representing the plaintiffs was Mr. Blackwood, the Carr family's legal counsel. Not a wrinkle on his suit, silver-rimmed glasses, and a smile that never reached his eyes. "We'll emphasize the girl's a threat," he whispered to his aide. "We don't need to be right. Just questionable." Principal Rivera was called to the stand. Fox didn't hesitate. "Before Zariah's arrest, how many bullying reports had been filed with your office?" Rivera hesitated. I can't recall exactly." Fox didn't blink. "I have copies of 12, from 7 different students, all naming Aiden Carr and his circle." The courtroom buzzed. In the far corner, Coach Terrell gave a subtle nod, like the quiet confirmation that the double game of the school board had just reached its final move. Zariah stepped onto the witness stand, facing Blackwood. "Miss Cole, would you consider yourself professionally trained in combat?" "Yes, I've practiced MMA since I was 8. "So it's possible for you to take down 3 individuals at once?" "If attacked, I'll respond to protect myself." "Then isn't it also possible you misused that strength?" Zariah looked him straight in the eye. "It's not my strength they fear. It's the fact that I'm not afraid of them anymore." No one in the room moved. Jake Wilson was next on the stand. He recounted being ambushed in the schoolyard. Fox smiled and played the security footage. Zariah walked calmly. Jake stepped in her path, said something inaudible. Zariah veered around him. No altercation. No blow. "So where did the attack happen, Jake?" He stammered. Maybe I remembered it wrong." Similarly, Brad's claim about the bus stop incident was dismantled with Naomi's unedited video. Then came Sam, a white student. "I was bullied by Aiden too, for refusing to hand over my test answers, but I was too scared to report it." Zariah returned to her seat. Then Micah stood. Naomi, Brielle, Sarah. Nearly 20 students rose from the benches, one after another, and walked toward the front. No one called them. No one made them. Each said one truth. "Jake locked me in a locker. Connor set me up in the gym. Tyler called me trash." One voice at a time. Fox stepped back. No more questions. Now, the evidence was the people, the pain, the rising chorus. The jury began taking notes. At last, Judge Thompson tapped the gavel gently. "Having reviewed the evidence and testimony, The defendant, Zariah Cole, is found not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Fox leaned in and whispered to Zariah, "But this is only the end of Act 1. The judge continued, "This court recommends the plaintiffs be reviewed under Clause 18, intentional false reporting." Aiden's face drained of color. Jake swallowed hard. Dax glanced at Brad, waiting for a signal, but found only a hollow stare. No plan, no leverage, just unraveling power, laid bare. Zariah turned to her mother. Dr. Amani Cole nodded slowly, eyes shimmering, not from grief, but because she knew her daughter had reclaimed her voice and her honor. That day, there were no banners, no clapping teachers, only a silent hallway where every student walked taller than usual. Zariah passed the lockers. Someone had written in marker, "We fight because she stood." She erased it, not to deny it, but to leave space for others to write their names. Because what was coming wasn't just admiration. It was a question echoing through classrooms, down every corridor. If I once stayed silent, what will I do now? Zariah kept walking, but now she wasn't walking alone. Behind her, footsteps began to echo softly, from those who used to be afraid. And now, they were beginning to speak. At the press conference after Zariah's acquittal, a reporter asked, "Zariah, how does it feel to finally have everyone believe you?" She didn't rush to answer. She looked straight into the camera, calm eyes, steady voice. "It's not that they finally believe me. They just can't deny it anymore." The quote went viral within hours. In less than 4, it was trending on Southern Twitter. Comment 1 if you know some truths don't need to be shouted. Because they're already loud enough, what follows will stay with you. At WSB-TV Atlanta headquarters, the segment "The Girl Who Didn't Stay Silent" aired. The camera cut slow. Zariah walking out of the courthouse, light catching her high-tied curls, shoulders upright, her expression not one of triumph, but of truth, laid bare. Other networks picked it up. The headlines read, "Black Student Falsely Accused, Education System on Trial." And a new hashtag emerged, #We Are Zariah, no longer confined to Milbrook High. Ms. Tanisha Rhodes, director of Equity Now, an educational justice nonprofit, decided to invite Zariah to speak at the Youth Voices Matter Forum. A Black woman in her late 40s, with her hair pinned in a tight bun and a voice that carried history. We were taught to endure. Now it's time to listen to those who speak. Beside her, Attorney Fox reviewed a new file, 18 fresh complaints from students at other schools, all seeking legal help. While Rhodes drafted the invitation, elsewhere in the city, Aiden Carr was dialing a familiar journalist, ready to strike back. Zariah sat before a mirror, preparing for her upcoming live television panel. In her hand, a sheet of paper listing possible press questions, ranging from soft to sharp traps. Behind her, Dr. Amani Cole rested a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "You don't have to speak for the world, but you've become the voice many are waiting for." Micah texted, "Whatever you say, they'll hear it, and that scares some people." Zariah stared at her reflection. "This time, I'm not here as a victim. I'm here as a survivor." On the broadcast, Zariah didn't dwell on the punch. Instead, she spoke of the first time she was asked to change seats because she was too noticeable, the time a teacher suggested she lower her tone to fit in, the detention for not smiling enough during an oral exam. The studio fell silent. None of it was in school records, but it lived in the memory of millions of Black students. Tanisha Rhodes followed with, "The system didn't just harm one student, it trained thousands to believe silence was safe." The State Education Board called for a community listening session and invited Zariah to speak. She stepped to the podium. No notes, no slides, just one question. If a white student were surrounded by 6 Black ones, would the system have handled it the way it did with me? Silence. One board member scratched his head. Another stared down at his notes. No one answered, but everyone understood. The question struck at the core. The moment was cut from the official broadcast, but it exploded across independent platforms. 3 weeks later, the Milbrook School District released a special report. Principal Rivera suspended indefinitely. School bullying response protocol under mandatory review. Freedom Youth Council created, student nominated. Zariah offered the role of honorary student advisor, unpaid. Zariah declined the title but offered a suggestion instead. Use the PR budget to hire 2 school counselors, one white, one of color. Give them equal authority. She didn't want to be a symbol. She wanted change. It ever ignored you. Zariah stepped out of the hearing hall. No flashbulbs this time. Just Naomi, Micah, and Coach Terrell waiting outside. Coach spoke softly. You're no longer just a student in PE, you just taught the whole system how to see itself. Zariah smiled, a quiet one, but this time it was the smile of someone who had earned the right to be silent without being misunderstood. And what lay ahead wasn't the end. It was the part the system no longer gets to write alone. Zariah sat quietly in the county library. An old yearbook from 1986 opened in front of her. She flipped through each page carefully, then stopped. No mention of Cole, no photo, not a single caption. And then, a black and white photograph slipped out, tucked between the back cover and the binding. Amani Cole, team captain of the debate squad that year. But her name had been removed at the last minute. Reason given. Too divisive. Comment 1. If you've ever found something deliberately hidden from history, simply because it dared to speak up at the wrong time. Milbrook wasn't a famous town, but it had too many blurred records. In the city archive, there was a basement few ever visited, filled with school documents, unsent letters, and photos never displayed. Zariah spent many afternoons there. No one asked her to, no one paid her. There was just something she couldn't walk away from. Then she found it. A faded school bulletin from 1991, headline redacted in thick ink, Black History, curriculum proposal denied, again. Zariah brought the photo to her mother. Dr. Amani Cole sat silently for a long time, then finally, I left Milbrook thinking no one would ever say my name again. But now you're standing where the doors once slammed shut on me, and turning that same doorway into a bridge for the ones coming next. Zariah asked, Why didn't you ever tell me? Amani replied, Because I didn't want you fighting ghosts, but you turned them into light. Micah brought Zariah a folder, documents he secretly copied from an internal PTA meeting. The records revealed this. Initiatives for cultural inclusion weren't rejected for lack of quality. They were denied for posing a risk of ideological disruption. One email, dated 2012, read, Avoid incorporating Black history themes into Spirit Week to prevent classroom division. Zariah gripped the folder tight. Her eyes didn't show surprise anymore, only clarity, sharp as a blade. This isn't just about school justice. This is about who gets to exist in collective memory. Zariah met with Ms. Tanisha Rhodes again, this time with a proposal. The Living Archive Project, an initiative to collect, display, and preserve the erased stories of Black students from Milbrook's educational history. Rhodes listened without a word. Then she stood, opened her personal safe, and pulled out a worn folder. I tried to do this back in 1998. They shut it down. Maybe now. It's your turn. The launch of the We Were Here exhibit, a part of the Living Archive Project, took place at Milbrook Central Library. Photographs of Black students once erased from yearbooks were blown up and hung in the Grand Hall. Beneath each image, quotes, not from newspapers, but from the individuals themselves. Zariah took the stage. We don't need pity. We need acknowledgement, not for the past, but for a future that deserves a full map. The exhibit was a massive success. Soon after, schools from across the region reached out, hoping to replicate the model. Zariah began leading workshops. But she didn't do it alone. She brought Naomi, Micah, and even Coach Terrell on as co-facilitators. An independent publisher offered to turn her story into a book. Zariah declined. I don't want my voice quoted, I want it heard, in the way I choose to tell it. But now, we are the next chapter in it. That evening, Zariah returned to the county library. She placed this year's yearbook beside her mother's. 2 books, 2 generations. A silence once enforced, and a voice that now filled it. On the cover of the new one, a black and white photo of Zariah standing among a crowd of multi-ethnic students, her arm raised, eyes locked on the lens. No caption, no title, because anyone looking at it would know. History is no longer missing names, and the next generation won't have to search for their own in silence. Zariah Cole sat in her new office, the one that used to belong to the assistant superintendent. A young intern knocked, her hand trembling as she held out a report. I'm sorry if this sounds intrusive, but why did you wait until now to speak up? Zariah didn't smile. She didn't deflect. She looked the young woman straight in the eyes and said, because power only means something when you use it at the right time, for the right people. Comment 1 if you've ever stayed silent, not out of fear, but because you were waiting for the right moment. 6 months into the restructuring of Milbrook's school system, Zariah was appointed Special Advisor for Educational Equity and Historical Storytelling, an honorary role, unpaid, but one that gave her direct access to the school board. Her office still had the same old glass door, the same desk, but a new sign hung on the wall. Not everyone needs a microphone to be heard. Zariah transformed the space into a welcoming center for students, interns, and parents who had once been excluded from meetings for being unqualified to speak. Naomi, the curly-haired girl who once quietly ran live streams, was now the communications director of Youth Memory Matters. Micah, the one who once wrote apology letters on behalf of the system, now led training programs for teachers on unconscious bias. Coach Terrell, no longer a PE coach, headed the new department for mental health counseling for Black students. And Zariah, no longer a student, no longer a victim, but a guide. During a statewide education board meeting, a senior member raised his hand. I believe in equity, but are we going too far by giving students so much power? Zariah sat still. She didn't answer right away. She waited until the end of the session. Then she stood, shared a personal story, and paused before saying, if that were your child, would you still ask, are we going too far? The room fell silent. The Living Archive project was adopted as a state-level model. Zariah and her team were invited to train staff across 3 different counties. At a middle school in Clark County, a 12-year-old Black girl took the mic and said, I never thought my skin color was worth telling stories about until I read the article on Zariah Cole. The room erupted in applause, and in that little girl's eyes, Zariah saw something greater than victory, a belief that her story was worth remembering. Milbrook High held its 75th anniversary celebration. Unlike previous years, there were no hand-picked speakers. Every student could nominate someone, and the name that came out on top was Zariah's. She stood center stage, under gentle lights, not too bright, not too dim. Milbrook once treated me as a stain on its record, but today I'm not here to reconcile. I'm here to claim the seat, not just for me, but for everyone who was ever pushed away from the table. Zariah didn't stay in her role long. She resigned after 1 year to launch a nonprofit called Legacy Steps. Its mission, legal support for Black students wrongly disciplined, archiving and publishing erased school records, training youth in resistant storytelling. Before leaving her office for the last time, Zariah left a note on the bulletin board. If you've ever wondered whether you had the right to tell your truth, here's your answer. Yes, and you don't need anyone's permission. At her final press conference, a reporter asked, Zariah, do you believe you've won? She shook her head. I didn't come to win. I came to open the door so the next generation could write the rest. The camera panned to the window. Outside, a group of Black students stood talking, preparing to enter a meeting with the principal. This time, their heads weren't bowed. They didn't need anyone to go first. They didn't need a shield. They had learned from Zariah how to use silence as a declaration and truth as legacy. This isn't just a story about a black girl who got pushed out of a meeting room, all because she wore the wrong pair of shoes. This is a story about everyone who stayed silent, not out of fear, but because they were waiting for the right moment to rise. Zariah Cole was never your picture-perfect hero. She didn't shout in the streets, she didn't break doors, and she didn't wait for anyone to open them for her. She simply chose not to ask for permission to exist and had the courage to speak the truth from the corners the system tried to hide. To anyone who's ever been overlooked, for your name, your voice, your skin, or the way you walk, this is your reminder. You don't have to be a superhero to rewrite the rules. You just have to protect your dignity, even when the whole room refuses to see it. And to every leader searching for the next generation of changemakers, this isn't a diversity buzzword. This is your wake-up call, because inclusion isn't a trend. It's the only thing that can save a system already rotting from the inside.